Hello, we're looking at today at reporting category 3 of the Virginia Standards of Learning, which looks at the Byzantine Empire, Islam, and the early Middle Ages, standards 8, 9, and 10. The first one we're going to look at is the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire forms out of the split between the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. As you see, the Byzantine Empire is there on the right. It kind of takes over where ancient Rome kind of used to be area. Roman Empire as a whole declined after the economy and the cost of defense. The devaluation of Roman currency kind of declined. It cost way too much just to keep up that big old empire. They also had a decline in their military because a lot of their members were foreigners, which resulted in a decline in discipline, and so they started to join other armies to fight against the Romans. People lost faith in Rome and those traditional Roman values. There was a lot of civil conflict over who should be the next emperor. In addition to that, they also started to be super attacked by Germanic tribes along their borders, so they decided to divide into two. Constantine moved the empire of the Eastern Roman Empire to Byzantium, and then he renamed it Constantinople after himself. Constantinople was in a really great place for trade, located right between the Aegean Sea and the Black Sea. He wanted to move away from the Germanic invaders as well, and then it was also like super close to some trade routes like the Silk Road, and it was easily fortified because of its location on the harbors. They continued a lot of these Greco-Roman traditions since it was located in the same place that Greece used to be and was a part of the Roman Empire. They had a lot of those similar traditions. They spoke Greek as opposed to Latin that they spoke in the Western Roman Empire. They also used the Greek Orthodox Christianity, which we'll talk about that split here in just a minute. The Greek and Roman knowledge was preserved in their libraries, and they created mosaics, which was also very similar to their Greek predecessors. Justinian was one of the second rulers in the Byzantine Empire. He was the first to codify Roman law under the Justinian Code. He was known for that codification of Roman law, the reconquest, or taking back over those former Roman territories, expanding trade throughout his empire, and building the Hagia Sophia, which is that church that's down in the right-hand corner. So, as I talked about before, there is a major split between the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. They totally broke up because they couldn't decide who was going to be more powerful. The Western Roman Catholic Church is centered in Rome, which is in Italy. It's farther from the seat of power after Constantinople becomes the capital, and they use Latin in their services. The Eastern Orthodox Church, otherwise known as the Greek Orthodox Church, was centered in Constantinople. It was in Constantinople, and they used Greek in their services. The division between the Western and Eastern Church really occurs over leadership. They couldn't decide who was going to be in charge. In the Western Church, it was the Pope. In the Eastern Church, it's the Patriarch. He was the highest-ranking bishop. However, the head of the church in the Byzantine Empire is also the head of the state, which is going to mean the emperor. They also couldn't agree on things such as celibacy that was accepted in the West, but not in the East. Now, the Byzantine Empire also has a pretty significant influence on Russia because Russia was connected to it via the Black Sea. They influenced them religious-wise, culture-wise, and through trade. Russia ends up adopting Orthodox Christianity and also adopting the Greek alphabet, which serves as the basis for its alphabet, the Cyrillic alphabet. St. Cyril is the missionary who brought Greek Orthodox Christianity to Russia, and so they named the alphabet after him. Pretty good dude. And you also see the similarities in religious architecture and art. They used mosaics and focuses in on icons as well. Go ahead and pause, take the quiz that is in the description below, and then meet me back here. The Islamic Empire is the next topic that we're going to touch on. This is Standard 9. We're mainly going to be focusing on the beliefs and the spread. So Islam all starts with this dude named Muhammad who had this vision from God. He starts in the city of Medina and then moves to Mecca, which is where the pilgrimage happens. Islam is based on the Quran, which holds the teachings of Muhammad. The major beliefs are organized into 5 pillars: profession of faith, praying 5 times a day facing Mecca, fasting during Ramadan, giving to the poor, and then a pilgrimage to Mecca. Later on, Islam is going to split into two branches, Sunni and Shia, or Shiite, because of debates over leadership following the death of Ali, who is one of the followers of Muhammad. Essentially, they can't decide who should lead. Should it be the followers of Muhammad, who he kind of put in place, like his right-hand man, his top like apostle, or should it be the actual descendants, like the flesh and blood of Muhammad? So Islam ends up spreading really quickly because of a weak Byzantine Empire and a Persian Empire. It ends up spreading from the Arabian Peninsula, which is this area right here, into North Africa, up into Spain. We see the advance of Islam all the way into France until the Battle of Tours, in which the advance of Islam is halted by Charles Martel and the Franks. They're like, no way, Jose. Islam had a lot of different accomplishments, mostly relating to academic knowledge. They expanded geographic knowledge through the creation of maps in the astrolabe, which eventually Christopher Columbus is going to use to get across the ocean. They also translate a lot of Greek works into Arabic, which eventually is going to be used by church scholars during the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. They also improve the Hindu numeral systems to make the Arabic numeral systems with that concept of zero. They also see an improvement to algebra. They create this church that's over on the side there. That's called Dome of the Rock. That's where Abraham tried to sacrifice Isaac. It's a really important place for both Jews, Christians, and for Muslims. They use a lot of calligraphy. They didn't believe in putting pictures of people in their art, and so a lot of their art is comprised of calligraphy and other mosaics. And the Muslims expand a lot of their medical knowledge, which is going to eventually be passed on during the Renaissance as well. Go ahead and pause, take a quiz on Islam. Meet me back here. The last topic we're going to talk about in this particular video is the early Middle Ages, which is looking at Standard 10. The Middle Ages are kind of characterized by this classic Roman heritage, their Christian beliefs. The basis kind of all of the Middle Ages is in Christianity. The customs of the Germanic tribes, which has kind of taken over a lot of France at this point, and feudal society. So feudal society is made up of this whole idea of breaking land into fiefs, which are given to vassals. The vassals can be a lord, it can be a knight. It's essentially the person that is gifted the land, either from like the king or whatever. And with the gifts of those vassals, the people who own the land, they're kind of in charge of it. So as we see people moving into a feudal society, you see like the politics shifting from these like greater nations and empires to smaller local lords. Every vassal has a whole team of serfs that kind of works for them and works the land, and they have these feudal obligations, which are kind of terrible for the serfs, where they have to work that land for their whole lives, and they can't leave unless the vassal says so. So the manorial system, which is related to the feudal system, is this whole kind of social system that is working with inside of the feudal system. It has this rigid caste structure where, like, you're a serf, you will always be a serf. And for the most part, the manors become really self-sufficient because we see trade dying down as there's lots of invasions and people are kind of taking protection on the manors. So the Roman Catholic Church grows in importance even after Roman authority declines. It becomes the unifying force in Europe, which becomes really important during the Middle Ages. Church authority ends up growing. Monasteries become really popular places of learning because the only people who really can learn at this point are the church scholars. And so they're the ones that are preserving that Greco-Roman cultural achievements that eventually come back later on. Missionaries end up carrying Christianity in Latin alphabet to Germanic tribes, and we see the spread of Christianity all throughout Europe. The Pope plays a really important part in all of this because he ends up anointing or crowning the different emperors, which give them the power of the backing of the church. It kind of legitimizes their power. And then lastly, we see in these manors, every manor kind of has its own parish priest that takes care of the needs of the people. They go around, they pray for the people, they take care of the social needs, like kind of just managing disputes and things like that. Charlemagne. The Frankish kings used the military power to expand their empire. There was a major alliance between the Frankish kings and the church to reestablish Roman culture in Western Europe. During this age of Charlemagne, the Franks, aka France, emerges a force in Western Roman Empire, especially after the Pope crowns the emperor, and all of a sudden Charlemagne becomes the Holy Roman Emperor, and then that area becomes the Holy Roman Empire. The power of a church is established in political life. There is a serious connection between the political power and church power. Roman culture ends up being reinterpreted in light of the church as well. Western Europe is included in the new empire, so it's a lot of France, Germany, kind of those areas. And Charlemagne does like the important work of establishing some public works here, like churches, roads, and schools that help to unify his empire and give him power. We also, during this time period, see a lot of invasions. There's a lot of like war going on during the early Middle Ages. Like, for example, the Angles and the Saxons, they came over from continental Europe to England. The Magyars moved to Hungary, the Vikings to Russia. And since there are so many invasions, the manors are providing protection from the invaders because a lot of them are protected by knights. These invasions disrupt trade. Towns decline, so cities are declining. People are not moving to the cities. New cities are not really being built. Instead, they're moving to these small towns, to these small manors, trying to gain the protection of the knights there. And the feudal system ends up being strengthened as a whole. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. Make sure you take the quiz on the early and Middle Ages, and we'll see you next time.